Hi, Vanessa. Thank you so much for hopping on a call and being with us on the channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I've been starting all of these conversations by just reminding everyone in our community that in a conversation like this is just you and I being two humans talking.
Right.
So even though I am a psychologist, you, Vanessa, you're not my therapy client. This is not a therapy conversation.
Mhm.
And this is really just to share stories so that people in our community know that there's hope for their
Yeah,
future and they know they're not alone in whatever they're going through.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, Vanessa, how did you and I meet? People don't know. We got to tell them.
For
What
sure.
was
For sure. I met this lovely person right here uh, in my undergrad at Vanguard University. She was one of my psychology professors. It was definitely a pleasure to take her courses and to learn from her. And so, being her student simply was how I got connected uh, to you. And it's been great ever since. So, yeah, that's how we kind of got connected.
Yeah, and it was a joy having you as a student, and so fun to have you in the classroom. But I especially loved when we would have office hours
Oh,
conversations, and I
yeah.
have I have memories of some of those, like in my physical office, and then when
Mhm.
everything went online during the pandemic, and then we went
Yeah,
on Zoom and had some conversations as well. So,
office hours were definitely, it gives you more of a personal window or experience with the professor. So I definitely was glad I got to take advantage of that and, ask you more questions and have conversations with you. It definitely made me feel more connected to you when we was in the classroom. So yeah, thank you for your office hours. That was great.
yeah, of course.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I feel like one of the questions college students ask is they're like, what are office hours for? Like, what even is that? But I think sometimes it's helpful to go into a professor's office
Yeah.
hours with like a question about the class,
Hmm.
but it's also kind of an opportunity just to get to know your teachers a
Yeah,
little better as well and let them get to know you.
absolutely. Definitely take advantage of those. Mhm.
Yeah. So let's give people some context, Vanessa. Like, are you still in college? Have you graduated college? Where are you at these days?
So I have officially completed all of my undergrad at Vanguard University with my bachelor's of art in psychology. So hey, so I'm super blessed about that. As of right now, I'm currently in the process of just starting a new job, post grad. And my prayer is in the future, possibly next year, try to get into a grad program. But of course, just got to get things aligned in the right way, in the right timing. But as of now, I've just been working post undergrad and just navigating what the next steps look like. So yeah, that's where I kind of at right now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Well, congratulations on graduating.
thank you.
Yeah. I know I was a personal witness to how hard you were working toward that goal.
Woo! It was a journey, but definitely the help of professors like yourself definitely made that final stretch way smoother. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that we have a topic in mind related to grief, and we're kind of it's a tough topic, so we
Mhm.
can work our way into that. But I do think, just as we're talking about where you're at right now, before we kind of get into the past,
Mhm.
what has it been like for you to be like looking for a job post graduation? I know our community might
Yeah.
be in the midst of that or see that approaching. What's that process been like for you?
In all honesty, it has been a bit daunting, a bit tasking. I think my first thought was I have a degree. It should be fairly simple to get a job. Um, but for me in particular, I can't speak for everyone, but for me in particular, it has really been a challenge. Sending my resume off to places, not hearing back, or getting rejected, or saying that you're overqualified, whatever that means. So
Oh,
after a while, you kind of get like, ooh, like, am I gonna fit anywhere? Then you kind of start to limit yourself. Like, I don't even want my dream job at this point. I just need a job, just to get on my feet and move and do what I need to do. And so, I'm super blessed and super thankful for the opportunities I've been granted, thus far from that I have had. I wouldn't say I've gotten my big girl job yet. Still praying for that, but I have obtained something. So hey, you take something, you work it, and hopefully I can move myself up and progress from there. But definitely the getting into the door of an opportunity was a bit difficult, and it did make me realize how important it is to have strong connections because, like the statement has been said, a lot of the times it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? There's a lot of people who probably
mhm.
was not qualified for their job, but because they knew certain people, they got in the door. And so, my goal now is that even with whatever opportunity I get, whether it's entry level or whatnot, I want to be intentional about the connections I'm making. So hopefully, for the next opportunity, that can help me, level up to a better career path. So for now, it's been a challenge, but I'm navigating it the best way possible, and having a solid community to help you uh, propel through that is super helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for giving us such an honest window into that process because, I certainly want people to have a realistic view of the
Mhm.
challenge that can happen after you graduate, right? And
Mhm.
at the same time, I don't want to discourage anyone. It's certainly possible to get a job after you graduate. You totally can,
Yeah.
but it's very different from being in school and like what you
Very.
need to do in school and how you're thinking about looking good on paper.
Right.
It's like, I do think you're sharing a lot of wisdom here that like it's really about who you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
A resume helps you get a foot in the door,
Right.
but for better or worse, it is kind of how the world works that like
Yeah.
our relational network, our
Big.
relational capital, our connections make a
Yeah.
big difference.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I hear you kind of talking to yourself about having realistic expectations about a job after school too, because I
Mhm.
don't know that any of us go from graduating to dream job.
And if you do, congratulations. Yeah.
More power to you. Like, send me a postcard because you'd be the first person I met who did it. But
Yeah.
I think, once you graduate, you're sort of like, then you're on a different, I don't know, what are those things called at the airport where it's like, instead of walking, you're on a
Oh,
moving like
yeah.
conveyor belt or something.
Yeah, I can't think of the word right now, and I don't want to say the wrong word, but I know what you're talking about. Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like you hop on a different kind of track once you
yeah,
graduate with a degree, and it's still a challenge, but
yeah.
you're kind of going like job to job to job to build a career.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So,
So congrats on landing a job.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. And in terms of challenges, you and I talked before this call about what you would be comfortable sharing and what you wouldn't be comfortable sharing because
Mhm.
I really felt very, very honored that I had a window into some of your journey as an undergrad and the challenges that you faced.
Mhm.
And part of that was grief.
Mhm.
So, where should we begin in terms of unpacking that?
Um. Well, I think just as a base, I'm pretty sure most people, if not all, well, of course, everyone at some point in their lives is going to experience grief and loss, right? But those of us that go to college, at some point, more than likely, you will probably experience losing some type of loved one during your college experience. It's a high chance. That's not something I wish on nobody. Um, but I definitely think it's about how you recover and how you move forward from said event. For me, I had encountered, of course, a lot of different deaths throughout school, people I knew through in church and things of that sort. And it's like it impacted somewhat, but not to where I was like fully shaken. But I did encounter a particular death that did shake my world, and that was my childhood best friend. Her name was Jessica, and she passed in 2020, the same year. COVID pretty much was pretty heavy on the earth, and it was already so many factors going on just with COVID alone and the transition of school and everything going on. A lot going on in my personal life as well. And then it was like that happened. And she was only, oh, Jesus, I want to say 20, 21 in
Mm.
between there. And so I was just about to start crossing over into my, I guess you would call senior year of credits, but I was kind of all over the place after that. So we don't know. But I had just became commuter rep in student government at my school. I was like, okay, I'm gonna start getting more involved. Like I'm gonna start doing more to, get out there. And then I was literally at Vanguard when this happened because we were pre-recording chapels. So I was there that week in the area to be closer to the school. We was just about to pre-record a chapel. And that morning, I woke up. I had just talked to her the night before. I had got like a room close to campus to be closer to the school to do the pre recorded chapel. And as I was about to turn in for the night, I had talked to my parents and I talked to my best friend. So literally, she was the last voice I heard that night before I went to bed. She seemed fine.
Um,
She didn't seem off or nothing. I mean, maybe if I was to really dissect every little thing, maybe I could be like, oh, maybe, but nothing major that I could say was like, whoa, like, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It seemed like one of our regular conversations. We was laughing at Voss water, like out of all things, it was just a regular conversation. It didn't seem nothing off or anything. And I went to bed. I woke up. I believe I'm trying to remember. Jesus, I maybe you could tell me this later, but I don't know if part of grief you start to forget certain parts after a while. Because I'm trying to remember actually, because it's been a minute. I believe my mother called me, and she called me, and she was crying. And my mom don't cry like that.
mm,
Like she really don't. Um, so immediately, like the first thing that came to my mind was something wrong with my dad. Like I don't know why,
mm,
but that was just my first thought. Okay, you crying is in my father, mom, dad. I don't know. So my first thought was there's something wrong with my dad. I'm like, Mom, what's going on? What's going on? She crying. She crying. I can't really hear what she's saying. I'm like, what is going on? She said, I can't remember word for word, but I'm paraphrasing. She was pretty much like, Vanessa, I need to I need to tell you something. I'm like, what are you talking about? So mind you, she's crying heavy. So I'm like, Lord, my heart is like, God, please don't tell me something with my father. That was my first thought. So then she proceeds to say, she said, Jessica passed. The first thing I said, Professor Park, was, "Oh, stop playing! Like that's okay, Mom. That's not even funny. You don't even be joking. But today's not the day to be joking about something like that. Like, don't even joke like that." I'm like, Mom, stop. Why are you doing that? She said, No. I'm sorry. She said, no, I'm not joking. I said, what are you talking about? Mind you, again, I just talked to her last night. I said, Mom, what are you talking about? She said, Vanessa, she's gone. I said, what do you mean she's gone? Like, did she go somewhere? Like, what are you talking about? She was like, no, like, Jessica passed. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because it's like, okay, I can understand or somewhat connect to it if like she was sick or you know what I'm saying? Like she had an out
Right.
condition or like we knew of it to be like a major accident, something to connect it to. But it's like she, for the most part, with the naked eye, she seemed completely fine, completely fine. And so she proceeds to say that she woke up. Of course, this is what they were told from her parents. She woke up, I guess, like any other typical morning. She greeted her mom in the living room. I guess her mom was like doing her exercises or whatnot. She went into the restroom. She just never came out. So I'm like, what? And so she proceeds to say that the mom heard a loud thud of some sort. So I'm assuming she fell somehow, some way in there. And I think after a while, she's like, okay, she's been in there a while. So I guess when she heard the noise, and then she's like, why she been in there so long? Excuse me, I'm sorry. So she goes to the restroom. The door's locked. So that made it worse because now, even if there was a slight possible chance to get to her to do anything, the process of getting that door open definitely probably took away more time. So by the time I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the people got there, the paramedics got there to get her, and to transport her, I'm not even sure if she even made it by the time they got to the hospital. In all honesty, I think she was probably out before that. So I remember her mother telling us at the time, and I could be wrong. I believe I thought she had said it was cardiac arrest. But then I remember later on she said that the autopsy report said unknown cause. Like it just said cause unknown. So I'm like, well, we really left with questions. I really don't know. So um dissecting all of that, I remember that day, Professor Park. Mind you, I was in a hotel across from campus there in the area. I was by myself. And my mom called me and she said, I had to call you and I had to tell you because I didn't want you finding out from other people. I wanted, as your parents, we wanted to tell you first. Or my dad told her, you need to call her and tell her now because we don't want her finding out, in other ways. And so my parents came up to where I was at, picked me up, and then my other parent took my car back because they was like, yeah, you're not driving. Because if I could be completely honest, if I had got behind that wheel, I definitely feel like I would have made some unwise decisions just based off of my emotion at that current time. I definitely would have not been thinking straight for sure. I probably would have just did something just to feel like it can numb the pain, and then that could have caused something more reckless. So I thank God that they forethought that to come get me. But yeah, that day I don't think I stopped crying at all. That one right there, it just didn't make sense, Professor Park. It's like, as a human being, we encounter different deaths, different things, and at least we could have some way to connect certain things of meanings of why. But this particular one, it didn't make sense. Like she was top of her class, very smart, full of life. If anything, if you saw our dynamic, I was more the one that was like, I just honestly don't want to be here. I'm not really into school. I'm not really into life and all that. I was more of the like depressed type of one. Reserved, didn't really care about too much. She was more of the like, no, let's live life to the fullest. Let's, like more of the ball of energy. You would think it'd be me, but really, I took from her. So it was more like she was more of the ball of light. So it was like, why did she have to go? So of course you got the whole physical part of grief and everything happening, but then I'm not gonna lie, it really tapped into my spiritual too, because it was like, well, why? Like, and then of course you have some people in your spiritual circle that say you don't question God, you don't da 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 da, and then you have some
Mhm.
who it was in His plan, it was in His will. I mean, I could safely say that now, but probably don't tell me that the day she passed. You know what I mean? So throughout that process, I definitely felt a lot of, I guess, phases and shifts and transitions, if you will, in my mental and my physical and my emotional and my spiritual. Um, it was one of those experiences that I could say I don't think I was ever the same from that. And then on top of that, I was in school too. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I was still in school. So definitely was just I like I'm completely transparent with you. Like I definitely was falling off, slipping, um, kept taking classes and retaking classes, taking classes and retaking classes. And of course at one point in time I think I was ashamed to admit that. But now I could honestly say no, that was part of my process. I probably could have passed the class the first time, but I just kept taking it and then retaking it, taking it, and then just it seemed like I was in this constant cycle because I just couldn't. I don't know. I guess I got stuck in that part of time. But yeah, that was definitely a huge moment in my college career that didn't only shake my college experience, but it completely shook my whole world. So yeah, that was a big one. That was a big
Oh
one.
my goodness. Thank you
Yeah.
for just
Yeah.
pouring your heart out and being willing to share with us about Jessica
Mm-hmm.
and this loss. I mean, this is
Yeah.
traumatic. This is like
Yeah.
traumatic grief, right? To have someone you're so close to,
Mm-hmm.
your hearts bonded together since childhood.
Yeah.
You just talked to her the night before,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then without explanation, the
Yeah.
next day she's gone. I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds incredibly traumatic.
Yeah. Didn't even now thinking about it, I just associated everything to that was just grief. I didn't even think about the fact that that was trauma too. Just in the thinking of the magnitude of it all and how it impacted me moving forward. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that it definitely made an impact on how I showed up in my connections moving forward too. Because I think, I have another best friend now, and I don't even think I stopped and realized that maybe there was times that I was holding my new best friend to standards that, you know, like I don't even think I realized I was doing that. Or there was times where I was talking about it and they were like, "Are you really over it?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm good." And then I'll have a moment and then I'm not. So yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that. And then too, like I've realized even with trying to make let me let me re-say that. I think I've struggled making friends after her. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, I got
Mhm.
some homegirls, I got some amigos. Don't get me wrong, but I think like my ability to make strong connections, um, and solid ones and keep them and they're meaningful, I think has been a challenge here and there since her passing. Because then it's like, as soon as it seems like it gets rocky with someone, I'll be like, man, I'm out. You know? Like, I'll be
Hmm.
like, it's like, okay, a 20-year something friendship is gone. So, like, why am I going to invest in something that's only been like 20 minutes? So that's just being honest of the fact that I guess some things took precedence after that traumatic experience that now I'm going to have to do the inner work to reverse and change because I don't want to now adapt to bad habits because of a traumatic experience. So I think it's healthy to talk about your traumatic experience like I'm doing today, but I
Hmm.
also feel like in the near future I'm going to need to get some type of therapeutic or strategic option on how to process that in a healthy manner so that I don't impact my future connections with other people because of what I encountered um, at that time. So, yeah, that was kind of some realizations I had from that too. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it makes total sense, right? You had a 20-year friendship
Hmm.
that ended traumatically,
Yeah.
literally overnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, no explainable reason. Like our brain can't handle uncertainty, right? We want to find a reason. We want to
Yeah.
control it somehow. We want to know the answer. And you
Hmm.
haven't even gotten that, right? And so if it's helpful to hear, Vanessa, like, I'm not wearing my therapist hat right now, but
Yeah.
we talk about trauma and we talk about grief, but
Mhm.
when they overlap, we do actually call that traumatic grief. So that's how I think about an experience like this. And it's worse when there's no explanation
Yeah. Yeah.
because our
Ooh.
mind is just like going in circles about why.
Right.
And, you mentioned like the people around you trying to I want to give people the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to be comforting, but there's nothing anyone can say, right?
Yeah.
To make it better. And then sometimes in our spiritual communities, it's like they're trying,
Yeah.
but all of us can say things that are not helpful, or
Yeah.
even not true. And you even asked earlier, like, oh, my memory is a little like
I had to think about it like, wait, yeah.
unclear. And that's actually part of trauma, right? That our memory can be fragmented
Mm.
when something was traumatic, like that's traumatic memory. So
Gotcha.
anyway, I'm getting too therapist-y, but going back to friends, it makes total sense to me
Hmm.
that the traumatic loss of a friend
Yeah.
would affect you at such a deep level that it's hard to make friends moving forward from that.
Yeah. And I don't even put that weight on anyone else. I'm taking responsibility for myself. I think I can show up and be a better friend to people. That's definitely my heart's desire. And, maybe I need tools on how to fine tune that. Because I definitely think there's parts that I still need to work on, address, and heal. Um, and of course, that not just comes from the grief I experienced, but just coming from college. You go through different experiences, and then as you're transitioning to that adulthood of like, okay, now you're not in school no more. Now you're navigating these different circles and these different friend groups, and like that's just kind of part of like transition as far as adulting. Um, like I said before earlier, like every day is just something new. And I think I'm trying to not get such a damper when things go left in life because that's evident it will, but trying to find the lesson in every moment, whether good, bad, indifferent. Let me find some type of lesson in this because it's going to help me somehow, some way propel for the next one and the next one and the next one. So yeah, I definitely look back at my college experiences, my grief and loss experiences, and they all have had different effects, if you will. But it does kind of give a testament to where I am now. and where I'm desiring to go when I reflect back. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It absolutely is a testament.
Mhm.
And gosh, I can't imagine all that you've been through and what this has been like. And I
Mhm.
admire your ability to keep moving forward and even to graduate, and even this posture of like, what's the lesson in this moment? Even now, what's the lesson in what I'm going through day by
Mhm.
day?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, for sure. Yeah, even now, just sitting here and reflecting back, you be like, wow, God, you did your big one. We done came a long way together. So yeah, uh, for
So
sure.
shout out to God for
Shout out
getting
to
you through.
God, he did his big one because sometimes you don't really realize how far you've really come until you kind of take a moment and just go back into your memory bank if you can remember everything, and you be like, wow, you know. And it just even right now, I'm like, wow, like, and that's just from the past what 4-ish years. That's not even going even back, but yeah, I'm grateful for every high, every low. Not saying I enjoyed the lows, but the lows are part of the process, and it definitely strengthens you in different areas. So I'm grateful for the journey thus far, and I'm open to see what the next one is. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes not until we really sit and reflect and zoom out, right? Like all of us are just like, well, I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think most of us are just trying to get through our day and do the next thing and move forward. And it might be rare that we step back and like really reflect on the years and the long view, the long
Yeah.
game.
Hmm.
And I'm hearing you be like, wow, like God really got me through this and has brought me so far. So yeah, shout out to God. I'll tag God in the description of this
For
video.
sure. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
think he has a YouTube channel.
For sure.
Okay, glad I can make you laugh a little bit. But, in terms of looking back at the years,
Hmm.
one of my memories that we were chatting about before this call was that when Jessica passed away, you
Hmm.
were working on writing a statement about her. Can you
Hmm.
talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
Yeah. I had never written a statement before for anyone of that matter, for a funeral, and so her parents asked me if I could write a statement, and I was like, "Whoa, like it's not as easy as I thought." Because typically, it's pretty easy to be like, "Oh, that's my friend," da 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 da, But no, this is not like I'm just talking about her achievements. This is final goodbye. I've never done this before. Um, and her mother is of academia, so I knew it was gonna have to be professional, of course, relatable and from the heart. But she was gonna want it correct, so that's why I was like, maybe I need to have someone proofread these because I knew she was gonna be like, if it's not it, it wasn't gonna be right. And she likes things with excellence, and that's what Jessica was about too. Everything was
Mm.
excellence with her, and so that's why I wanted to be intentional with having someone I value to just have another set of eyes, to look at it, see if it looked, if it made sense, of course, if it flowed right, if it was all together. And so, yeah, I just thought to reach out and ask for help with that because I don't wish that process on nobody. It's inevitable, but if and when that time comes, just make sure you have someone close to you that can kind of just help you with that process so you don't feel alone, because I know that's some heavy writing. I've written a lot of essays in school, but that's a paper you don't want to write. I'll say that. That's a hard one. Trying to
Yeah.
fit 20 years of a person's life into one statement. Like, can you even really do that? Maybe some who are really great writers, but I tried my best. I don't know if it was the best statement in the whole world, but I would say for the season and for that particular time, I was hopefully it came across as meaningful as possible. So, um, yeah, that was that was some heavy writing for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, some very heavy writing and feels like a lot of pressure.
it is.
And for people in our community who are listening to us talk,
Mm-hmm.
you and I worked on the statement together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had a Zoom call
Mm-hmm.
to go
Yeah.
over it and just work on it. Yeah, and I was really grateful that you reached out for help because
Yeah.
I think anyone in that position should be reaching out for help.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted it to be good. I wanted to speak well of her, and I knew I didn't want to just go up there and freeball it just with emotion because we've seen a lot of cases like that where when you're overwhelmed with emotion, you may not even say the right thing. It could be all over the place. So I just thought it was helpful too. I mean, I didn't negate my emotions in that moment. Don't get me wrong, but just for statement purposes, I wanted to just have something precise and meaningful that tried to give a glimpse of her life in that moment. And so I did give the state. They put it in the program, but then I also got up and read the statement out loud. I was on the like they had me ride to the service with the parents. Like I've never done that before. Like be with the main family. Like they had me sit on the front row. Like I've never done that. Not even with family members. Like that front row experience is different. People be like, "I want to be in the front." No, you don't. Not in that kind of situation. No, you don't. That's not for the weak. I think for the most part, for during the service, it's kind of hard again to even remember every detail from the service. But for the most part, I was keeping it together throughout the service. I was like, all right, keep it together. Not negating my emotions, but just being cool, calm, collected. Because I think I was feeling a whole bunch of emotions that day. Um, and I did get a little teary eyed, of course, and emotional while I was reading the statement. And I think a few of the young ladies from my parents' church came up and just stood there in like solidarity. But for the most part, I was pretty decent, if you will, in that environment for the most part. But I'll say the part, Professor Park, where I just like completely lost it. Whew, baby, when they closed that casket at the
Mhm.
end, they did that final um open close casket at the end. When they closed that casket, I mean, of course, she's already gone. But it was something about that last close that it was like, oh, this is final. Like this real, like y'all really gonna take it. Like, oh. And I remember just screaming. Like crying. You ever heard someone cry but they screaming? Like screaming crying? Whew. That one was hard. That one was hard because it was like, man, no. Like, come on. Like, God, just for 5 more minutes. Something. Give me something. That last one, Professor Park, that one took the gut right there. It was one of those moments that I don't think however life was before that, like I can't even go back. I don't even remember who Vanessa was before that, after that moment. It just completely changed everything. So, yeah, the help that you gave me in preparing for that day definitely was super essential. I think I already knew going into it was going to be a heavy filled emotional day, but just having that helpful resource from you um with my statement it just made that whole process just a little bit more smoother. So for that, I'm extremely grateful to you, for helping me do that. Because at the end of the day, you were my professor. All you could have just been like, no, all I do is grade your papers, and I don't have to help you do all that, technically. But you were just so willing and so nice about it and helpful. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I never will not be thankful for that because yeah, that was just a super helpful, essential part in that, whole process. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. Of course, Vanessa. And again, I feel honored that you asked for help and that I could play a small part in that because what you went through, I wouldn't wish on
Yeah.
anyone, wouldn't wish on my worst enemies. And I just,
Yeah.
hearing you talk about that memory of when they closed the casket, that's just
Yeah. Ooh.
such
Yeah.
a final moment,
It is.
right?
It is. I don't think nothing can prepare you for that. As many great lyricists as there is, and speakers, and books, and resources, and things out there, and I'm knocking those things. Those are great. Those who seem to have it all together, shout out to you. But in that one split moment, like all bets are off. You don't know how you're gonna react. Some people they be trying to get up in there. Some completely lose it. I've seen a variety of different things, but for me, I was sitting down on the bench on the pew, and I was hunched over like this, and then I was just kind of like cry screaming or scream crying or however you want to say it to myself, because it was like, man, they really taking her. So, whew, yeah, that was tough. Yeah, that's a hard one. I want to give more prolific words, but the simplest way I can say is that was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And I think every
But,
day I'm still swallowing different pieces of it. So
mhm.
yeah.
And I think there are no words, right? Like, that's one of the things about grief. Like, there are
Hmm.
no words to really express
Yeah.
the type of love that was between you as friends for 20 years. And then that moment of the casket close, there's not really any words to
Yeah.
give to that moment. And that's a powerful metaphor to say it was a hard pill to swallow. And every day I'm still swallowing a piece of it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I appreciate, well, there's a lot that I appreciate about this moment and you being willing to hop on this call with me.
Hmm.
You being so brave to share with us transparently and be so honest about what this grief has been like for you. And
Hmm.
I also appreciate that we're having this conversation at a time in your life where, like, we're not going to sit here and be like, well, now it's all better years later. Like, that's just not the
Hmm.
reality. I think sometimes when people share their story, they feel a pressure to say, well, everything's better and now it's tied up neatly with a bow.
Hmm.
And saying, like, every day I swallow a piece of that pill, I think it's just, that's very real.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I At one point, I don't think I was able to get through a conversation about her without boohoo crying. So, I'm better now. Um,
Mhm.
I don't think it'll ever be like, oh, I'm perfectly over it. I don't think no one ever gets perfectly or over it or officially masters grief. I don't think that's something that you're supposed to master. I don't think. But I do believe that over time, you learn to live with the reality, um, and move on, and move forward. But to attest what you were saying about the bravery of sharing it, I believe for me, sharing about it, it just helps me heal a little bit more. It just kind of helps me keep her story alive, keep and then it keeps that part of my heart still warm, if that makes sense. Because there's
Mhm.
times where like I'll go days, weeks, months without even mentioning her, talking about it, and then I kind of feel bad, like, oh, I ain't even really said nothing. I ain't mentioned her. I ain't posted her. The first year she was gone, I was like talking about her, crying about her, posting her all the time on a normal, on a normal. After a while, it started to kind of slow down. It started to kind of slow down because I tried to just kind of accept the reality. Okay, she not coming back, so it's like I just kind of started to shift my focus to other things. I didn't say I forgot about her. I just wasn't as consistent with my conversations about her or posting her as much. But then when somebody else posts her, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I gotta deal with it. I still gotta deal with it. So, like I said, even today, right? This is probably the most I've talked about her in a long time. So it's opened up a door of emotions. Not in the sense of like I won't be okay after this, but it's like, oh, okay, like my heart still is warm for that. I haven't completely became numb. I still feel for her and still it's still there. So if anything, today's conversation has just reminded me like, oh, okay, like don't fret, don't fear. Things might not always be going the way I desire in my current right now life, but the fact that I can still have a softness to a hard situation reminds me like, okay, um, I've been through that, I've made it through that. So it's still possible for me to navigate what's next. I just gotta give myself grace, give myself a chance to figure it out, and I won't get there, and that it's okay not to forget what you've been through, but to use it as a stepping stone for the next, you know. And so that's why I think I'm able to share about it so freely and openly, because a part of that heals a part of me. So
Mhm.
that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, that's hard for me to describe it, hard for me to articulate it, but there's something about healing where you sharing your story is healing for you. It
Mhm.
warms that part of your heart where Jessica lives.
Mhm.
Um, my hope is that anyone listening to this who's also grieving or who has lost someone, especially
Mhm.
in a traumatic way, it's warming a part of their heart.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to go into detail about this because of my own,
Mhm.
boundaries and stuff, but it actually warms a part of my heart too. For someone that I lost in a traumatic way. And you didn't know that until this moment. But
Yeah.
it's just amazing about healing that when we share our story and we just never know, right? The effect on us, but then the effect on the other people
Mhm.
who hear.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. I um sometimes I have to remind myself that some of the things sometimes it's for others as well to kind of see people how you follow through. And so sometimes I'm mindful of that. Like just as a quick little insert, my now best friend in February of this current year, he lost his mother to sickle cell anemia. And so that shook his world, right? And so now that I have this experience that I went through, I'm kind of able to use that as now I take everything I went through in my experience. I'm mindful of what I didn't like during that time, what I appreciated during that time. So now when I approached him in his situation, there are certain things I'm not even gonna say because I know when I encountered my situation, I didn't like that during my grief. Like, don't tell me it's gonna be okay right now. Not when it first happens. Just like give me a minute. And then showing up for someone else's grief, it helps you kind of gain more awareness and educating yourself on how to be more intuitive and intentional to someone else grieving. So I definitely think my experience somewhat helped me to help someone now in their experience, and then so on and so on. And so yeah, I try to look at even the good, I guess you could say, even in what you would deem a bad situation. So
Yeah. And that's beautiful. I mean, I think we would all have our own language for that. And for me, I sometimes use this word like redemptive. Like, I would even go so far as to say, like, we go through things in our lives that are traumatic. You might even say
mhm.
that are so dark. We might even call them evil. I mean, sorry to use such a heavy word, but,
Word, yeah.
you know, I think in my own worldview, I don't think of it like those things were supposed to happen or that was the plan. I even just think of it like, despite that not being the plan, like good things can still grow out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That there can be these redemptive pieces about how it changes us, and then how it's kind of the thing of like if your heart breaks, if my heart breaks, it can break
Mhm.
open,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's still heartbreak, but the openness is that we can be with people in a different way.
Right. Because I experienced what I experienced now, when he has his moments that people don't understand, I could see it because I've been there. I've been there when I've experienced emotions that I can't quite give a definition to or explanation to. I've experienced times where I did not want to be here. I've experienced times where I, as a even a believer, that I even got angry and frustrated with God. Like, why? And so when I now saw my current best friend going through different stages of grief, you definitely have more of a sensitive approach to it, um, because you now have experienced some of that ordeal. So um, yeah, you just my prayer and my hope is that moving forward, I will become even more of a mm, helpful tool to people who have experienced that, because everybody needs somebody and during that time. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody needs somebody, and sometimes we need somebody who maybe hasn't been through the exact same experience, but has been through something
Like
at
similar.
that level of pain. Yeah, similar level of pain.
Yeah.
It's kind of like those are the people that can get it and can be alongside us.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I have so many questions, but
Okay.
you mentioned like after losing Jessica, just
Mhm.
feeling so stuck, and
Mhm.
even retaking classes to try to finish and graduate.
Mhm.
Um, was there anything or anyone that helped you get unstuck? Like, I'm just imagining there might be people listening to this that are still in that stuck place. So was it just time? Was it something else specific?
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that because I was just thinking too, like everybody might not have the resources or the community that can be helpful in those tough moments. And so for me, uh, well, at the time when I was still at Vanguard, I had access to, I believe, the health center where we had, therapists there to help us. And so I definitely utilized that resource as much as I could while I had access to it at the school. Um, I had a few people that, I guess that my family knew through ministry and things like that. Some would check in here and there. Um, But in all honesty, like it was a dark time. I just didn't want to be bothered. I withdrew from a lot of things. Like I said, at the time, I had a lot going on in my personal life. On top of that, and then of course the world was already kind of going through a lot with COVID. So you had the mindset of like making sure my family's okay from this COVID stuff. And then, I think I was recently going through a breakup around similar. time frame, and a lot of the young people that I was connected to at my parents' church at the time, we weren't seeing eye to eye. I just wasn't a lot of people's favorite person at the time. Just in all
Mm-hmm.
honesty, I had frustrated quite a bit of people with my immature actions, and as much as I was trying to apologize, it was like everybody against me. It was like one of them, because at the time it was like me and Jess was together, and then it was everybody else. But when she gone, it's like okay, I don't got nobody. I didn't really have too many people behind my back, and so it was more people coming at me than being there for me. So around that time, like going into the next year, I think I like buried myself in work. In all honesty, I became a worship leader at my school. Just got connected and just started staying busy, like staying busy. And then around that time, I reconnected with someone from high school, which is now my current best friend. And then he at the time he connected me to a new church, which is where I go now. And so, like I said, even with new things that were happening as the years went on, I still was going through. I still was having challenges with making friends. I still was having challenges trying to handle old connections. Some people was falling off. Some people was mad at me for some of my past actions. Some new people I was trying to be friends with was giving me a hard time. Like I was just going through it, and I'm just like, man, I can't catch a break. Which goes back to what I was saying before of even though what I went through happened in 2020, it was still impacting me even years later with how I was going about my connection building with other people. And so it got to a point where I was like, well, I don't know. Like, could we switch places? 'Cause this is a lot, this is a
Mm-hmm.
lot. But I had to remind myself that obviously, if I'm still here, it must be for a reason. God has some type of plan and purpose for me. Don't know quite exactly what that is 1000%, but I know it's something because I'm still here. And so, the current pastors that I have now definitely have been uh, impactful in my spiritual walk. So they have been helpful in that post process moving forward as far as like being helpful in that community aspect. So when I got in a new church and got new leadership, I very much admire their leadership covering type of ordeal in my spiritual walk. My church family, everybody's not perfect, but hey, I still love my church family. And they have been impactful in that post process. And then honestly, my current best friend, he's been extremely helpful. So I mean, all in all, just to kind of sum that up, it definitely is essential, I believe, to have some type of community, somebody that you can go to that can just kind of help you walk those steps out. And in the event, like you said, if there's people listening who might not always have that circle of support, I definitely would suggest like looking into maybe like a grief and loss support group or connecting with a therapist if you can through like your health insurance or something like that, or just looking into whatever type of possible option there is out there and get yourself some type of help and support because this process, I believe, is not meant to be done alone. I wouldn't advise it. It's definitely more helpful when you have some form of support there. So, yeah. And then, of course, my parents. Gotta make sure I put them in there. Lord Jesus. Yeah, they will get me. But my mother and my father um, were super essential in that process as well. One of my siblings, my sister, she was helpful. I remember that day it happened. She came here. I was just throwing out stuff in my room for no reason. I don't know why I was cleaning. And she was just
Mhm.
there. She was right there. So, um, and then be careful too who you're being that vulnerable around as well during that time. Make sure it's someone who's not there to judge you, but just willing to just be right there, right where you are, and just kind of just be a fresh fragrance for you. Someone who could just
Mhm.
kind of help guide you through that. You don't want nobody around you that's going to trigger you or make it even worse. You want to be intentional with who you're allowing to kind of let your hair down around, especially in a high risk situation like that. So yeah, but there are
Yeah.
resources out there, so definitely try to get plugged into that if you don't always have someone to go to.
Yeah. Well, we can't do it alone. That's
Mm,
my thought listening to you. Like we can't. We can't move forward. We can't take our next steps. We can't move
mm,
through grief. Without people. And so, yeah, anyone listening to this, I just love how you're encouraging people to like get connected. Whether it's
mm-hmm.
a therapist, whether it's the counseling center at their school, a
Right,
friend, a family member, spiritual community. Um,
absolutely.
we need people,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I think when I look back on my own life, it's also surprising who can be there for you
Mm-hmm.
when these things happen. Like it's not always who we expect, right?
I
It's
was
not
just about to say that. Mm-hmm.
it's not who we would predict. And I think that's a hard thing about life is that people are all in their own stuff, people are all in their own season. And so depending on when we go through something,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to intersect with where the people in our lives are at in their own life. And so it's very surprising. Will come to the forefront, and we just kind of have to be discerning about, okay, who's available right now, like who can be there for me right now. And if some people can't, that's hard. It can be disappointing, it can be hurtful. But my memories are people who, when I've gone through something, it's like people who could show up and be present, who could be warm.
Mm-hmm.
I could be like a non-anxious presence in
Yeah,
those moments.
for sure. Absolutely. Um, yeah, because there was definitely people at that time that I was like, shouldn't you like be here for me? And
Mm.
that would be another added frustration. And then it would be like the most random people you would think that wouldn't be there. They was there. So like you said, very unpredictable, but I would just say moving forward for anyone who is anticipating going through that or might be currently going through that, just try to give space in your heart to be somewhat receptive to whoever is able to be that help, to be in that help space for you. Just kind of have a openness and a receptiveness to it, because sometimes the people we want the help from, if it's being denied, sometimes that might be God's way of saying we don't want you to get it from that source right now. And like you said, everybody might not be a believer, and even for those who might not be believers, just like you said, everybody's in different spaces of their lives when everything is constantly moving. Someone could be going through a divorce, someone could have lost a parent, somebody could just be getting married, somebody could just be having a baby. Like everybody's going through different things in their lives. And so even if you're not a believer, if you can say you feel like someone just doesn't have the capacity to hold that, just try to maybe at least be considered to say, you know what, it's okay. I, I'll I'll just look elsewhere um, for help and support. But I know for me, if it wasn't just for me personally, if it wasn't for God and my community, I definitely wouldn't be here. So I'm grateful for that in that aspect. But
Yeah.
support, it is across the board, whether you're a believer or not. I believe that there's support across the board that you can obtain if that's what you desire. So
Yeah.
support is inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's inclusive for sure. And I think, anyone in our community, watching this call, or listening in, I think what we're getting at is like whether you believe in God or not, whether you identify as spiritual or religious, spiritual but not religious, or you're Christian or you're Muslim or you're Jewish or Taoist or Sikh, whatever, or if you're atheist or agnostic. Hopefully you can believe, maybe not even that you believe in people, but hopefully you believe that people exist, because what we're getting at is when you go through a difficult season, pay attention to who might be showing up in your life. And and also sometimes you have to reach out. If no one is showing up, we can't do it alone. So reach out and either find community, find a friend, find people online, right? A grief and support group. I love that idea.
Yeah. There's no shame. There is no shame for asking for help. There is no shame for admitting that you might be at 15% instead of your normal 100. There's actually strength in saying, like, I need help. I'm not at my best right now. Because then it shows that you know you can't do it alone. And you know when you need that extra support. So, yeah, if you were raised in that environment where asking for help seemed lame, it was probably because they didn't have the support. So, there's no shame in that. Getting help is cool.
It's cool. All the cool kids are getting help and asking for help. So come along with us. We're cool kids, right?
Besides the fact that it's cool, it's necessary. It's necessary to function, I believe. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes we say about grief that it's not that we ever get over it or that it's like resolved or fixed or solved. It's that we're healing from grief, we're processing grief, we're finding a new normal.
Right. That's a good way to say it.
We're finding a way to live that honors the person, the loss.
Yeah.
And also, grief is love continued. It's a testament to the love that we have for the person. And moving forward doesn't mean we love them any less. Moving forward just means we've found a way to live that honors them and that they would probably want us to live,
Absolutely. And she would. She definitely would.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like moving forward and living in a way that honors people, I know that since you and I are connected on the gram, we follow each other. I've been seeing what you're up to with It's a Safe Space. And can you share a little bit with our community about what you're up to over there? What is that all about?
For sure. It's actually funny that you mention it because if my memory serves me correctly, I believe I started it in like 2020-ish, which is around the same time of all the significant events that happened. If not the same year, it had to be in close proximity of time frame. And I think the intention behind it when starting it was simply because it was COVID. We was at home. We wasn't going nowhere. I didn't have many people to talk to. So I was like, okay, I want to do something that's like makes me be consistent at something or, something I can just do. So I just started having conversations on live and talking about different topics that I thought were relatable or interesting. And I started it initially on my personal page, my main personal page. And then when I started getting connected to the new church I was attending, I met a young lady there and she liked what I was posting. And she was like, I like what you're doing. And then she wanted to join me. And I was like, you do? And she was like, yeah, I want to join you. So then she started hopping on some of my lives. And then she was like, I think we could really make this a thing. Like, we can, like, maybe take this to the next level and kind of elevate it. I said, what? You want to? And she said, yeah. So I was like, okay. So we started going together and doing lives together. We made a whole brand new page. And then everything became more collaborated type of deal. And we've been going solid for quite some time now. Like, it's so solid. It's like some of the old childhood people I grew up with, they were like, okay, I see you. And they were like, we're proud of you. You guys are like consistent. We be seeing you like every week or just about every other week. And even people at our church, they be like, okay, safe space. Like, I mean, so we got a little traction. We got a little traction, but our prayer and our hope is like that we can grow it into like a podcast and just have it as an outlet to have open conversations with like-minded individuals, and our intent is basically talking about things that are centered around healing, growing, and evolving. Haha, kind of similar to what we're talking about right now. uh,
Ah, yes.
and so, and then of course, it's kind of centered from a Christian perspective, but we make it super inclusive. We've talked to men, women, some younger people. We've ranged in topics from ministry to business to relationships to our calling to our purpose. And in all honesty, people think we just get on there just to have conversations with other people just to have it. But in all honesty, me and my friend who does it now can attest, it be healing us. It be teaching us. Like, we reach out
Mhm.
to the guests, we have conversations with them, but if nobody learns nothing, we definitely do. Like, it be helping me for sure. So even if it reaches 2 people, 20 people, or whatnot, we just pray that it's something that's helpful or useful. Sometimes to have those conversations that you can't always have with family or in church or in certain spaces, we just try to have a little outlet and just talk about things that are, relatable for our peers to talk about. So that's kind of what it's about. And yeah.
I love it. I love it. I'm so excited about this, and I'm excited for you and your co-creatives, and I'm excited for the people in that community who are really benefiting from those
Thank you.
conversations you're having.
Thank you.
And I do want to flex. I mean, like, so people listening to this call, if they want to follow along with what you're doing with Safe Space,
Hmm.
where's the best way for them to connect with you? Is it on Instagram? Is it somewhere else?
So we do have an Instagram, we do have a Facebook, and our intent is to, of course, elevate all of our platforms in the next year. But our main source to connect is our Instagram, which
Okay.
is at It's a Safe Space Live. So ITSAFESPACELIVE. That's funny, but yeah, it at It's a Safe Space Live is our Instagram. And we
Okay.
typically go live on Tuesdays at 7:30. But if we don't, we always let everybody know. But yeah, it's just two young ladies there who love Jesus and is trying every day. That's just pretty much what we're doing. And yeah, that's our page.
I love it. Okay, and I'll put the ID handle in the
Thank
description
you.
so
Thank
people can see
you.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just I'm just curious, like, what has it been like to be doing that, to show up live on a consistent
I
basis?
know.
The miracle of the internet, anyone can see you.
Yeah.
How's it been?
Hmm. At first, I didn't think nothing of it because I was just doing it on my page. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just on here. I'm just talking. I'm just talking. But then when I connected with her and we started doing it more often, now you got her followers watching, right? Now you got the people she's pulling in watching. And I didn't realize, like, it may not reflect in our followers numbers as analytics would say, but like there's people that be watching us that don't even follow us. So then it's like we'll get DMs, they be like, oh, we saw that. I'm like, does this person even follow us? Or we'll go somewhere and they'll be like, oh, don't y'all be on that? It's a safe space. I'll be like, you watch that? I'll be like, what? And then I keep forgetting, like when we go to church, like they can't see us on their phones. They be like, oh, so what y'all talking about next week? I'm like, oh, you what? You looked at that? You were looking? I didn't know. Like they can't see us. But yeah, it's good. There have been times where we even had someone give us some interesting feedback. I'll say the least. It wasn't as pleasant, but they didn't like someone that we interviewed, and we didn't even respond to the hate because we don't do that. But we did follow up with the guests we had and let them know and wanted to make sure they were comfortable because like we realized like, oh snap, people are really watching. Like, oh. So now we're like really trying to be intentional about what we're saying, what we're sharing, because people could tune into anything, anywhere. It's a bunch of platforms out here. But if something you're saying is impactful enough to where a person is willing to allow that sound bit to be a part of their life, then we want to be careful how we handle that and be, you know, transparent and intentional with that. So yeah, it's been interesting. The consistency makes you be like, oh, okay, wow, like and we prepare. We've been having like we'll have weekly meetings. We be doing and we be having our little office hour and we be talking to people and then like I got two of my other friends from church. We done made us a little staff. We had a little staff meeting. Like we really was like, okay, we're gonna be serious about this because it may not be at the level we wanted, but we're gonna start preparing as if we're already manifesting that to happen. So
Mhm.
it's been a fun experience and I'm hoping in the future it will grow and grow more. So yeah, it's just a fun way to just chat with people, learn things, and hopefully it'll be tangible in our lives to use on a regular basis. So yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exciting. And I have no doubt that it will continue to grow and evolve
Thank
into the
you.
future. Yeah.
Oh,
Um, I think I think a lot of people who are in high school or college right now,
mhm,
they have designs, they have dreams to be like a content creator or be an entrepreneur, be an influencer.
mhm,
Is there anything you wish that you had done differently, like toward the beginning of that particular
mhm.
journey?
Um, I think there's a lot of things I could say. Oh, I wish I could have did different. Blah blah blah. But see, when I first started it, I don't think I had the intention that it was going to be something more than just me going live on my normal page. I thought it was just going to be me going on my page, talking to my few little followers, and it just be that. Like, just that. I don't think in my mind I thought it was going to grow into something more in the beginning. So then when it did start to grow, I was like, oh, okay, you know. So now I would say that I'm more uh mindful that I do want to look into I've been watching interviews more now. And not so much the guest, but the interviewer, right? Watching how they ask questions, watching how they follow through with their conversations and things of that sort. And so I would say, if anything, those who wants to prepare in that role and things I would have been more mindful of, whatever you're desiring to do, watch someone who's great at that job. Watch someone who's great in that role so you have something to kind of base yourself in versus just kind of just throwing yourself out there and just free balling it. And sometimes that's element too, but it never hurts to just kind of watch those who have mastered a level pretty well. Then it kind of helps give you more of a better blueprint on what's to kind of come, what elements you want to get, what kind of equipment you want to get, what kind of resources you want to get. So I definitely would say doing more thorough research and emerging yourself around those who do well in that lane, if that's what you desire to do. So yeah, I would have done that better more in that.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's great advice for someone who's kind of coming up and
Hmm.
maybe hasn't even started yet and they want more of an interview format. Is find examples of people who are doing it really well.
Right.
And like you said, pay attention to how they're asking questions, how they're facilitating the conversation, figure out what your setup is going to be.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I would add too, like, don't feel like you have to be a copy of someone else. Like, you got to
Right.
find your own style.
You don't have to compare. Of course, find out the blueprint, but then at the end of the day, make it your own.
Mm,
Yeah, because what you make your own, that's what makes it unique, right? Because there's a lot of probably safe spaces out there, but there's no other Venetia and Vanessa. So yeah, they gonna get what they get from us. Because people could try to imitate, but Even twins don't have the same exact little, stuff. They're different. So, yeah, make what you do special and unique to you, because that's what will make you set apart from all the other platforms. So, yeah.
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 And be yourself, right?
Be yourself. That's the job that no one can take from you. Mhm.
True. Well, Vanessa, I'm so grateful that we had a chance to connect on this call. And I somehow have fallen into, speaking of me trying to figure out my own interview style, I somehow have fallen into now this habit of like the question that I'm closing out conversations with is, what is something that you wish you knew when you were younger? So what would you say to that?
Mhm. Wow. I feel like this is so much I would want to say. Um, I definitely think every high and every low was necessary on where I am now. So, with that in mind, I think I would definitely say, um, stop trying to, like I said earlier, stop trying to compare yourself to others. Stop trying to be like others. Stop trying to fit in when you were never made to fit in.
Mm.
There's something different about you. There's something unique about you. You may not know exactly what it is, but I promise you, if you would just be confident in what makes you authentic, you will be fine. You are okay. You know that what you have, what you carry is special, and you don't have to be like anybody else. And so, walk in that confidence. I definitely would come from that more of a encouraging point, I think, for myself. So, yeah, I hope little Vanessa somewhere in here hears that even today. Like, as I'm saying it out loud to you, I'm hoping that there's a little part of me, little baby me, um, that can kind of hold true to that truth, even moving forward. So, yeah. Like, you're a star. You got this, girl. You're gonna be good. You're gonna be solid. You don't have to copy or try to be or look down on what you think is not good, because maybe what others deem bad is part of your unique, makeup. So work with what you got and make it shine. So yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Vanessa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was a very great experience. I didn't know exactly how it was all gonna go, but this just was like a breath of fresh air to be able to share. And it just really not only made my day, but I just feel like it just made my whole year. Like, it just was
Mm,
like, oh, okay, like, what a way to finish. So thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
of course. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much.